virtue. They confuse fear with morality. So, when you start to grow beyond those tight, familiar lines, when you begin to speak louder, say no without guilt, or walk away from people who drain you, it can feel wrong. It can feel terrifying, because you're becoming someone you used to be afraid of. But the truth is, the person you feared becoming might be the only one capable of carrying the weight of your life. This is a bitter, necessary truth. Here are 7 signs that you're evolving into the very person you once couldn't imagine becoming, and why that's not just okay, but essential. You were afraid of the person you are now. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. Look back at who you were 5, 10, maybe even 20 years ago. What kind of person intimidated you? Who made you second-guess yourself before you spoke? Who made you uncomfortable? The person you are now used to scare the hell out of you. The version of you that speaks up without apologizing, that says no and doesn't explain, that makes bold decisions, even if they upset people. That version felt impossible once, like something other people were allowed to be, but not you. Back then, you were careful. You tiptoed through conversations, trying not to upset anyone. You toned yourself down to seem easier to love. You stayed small so you wouldn't be called arrogant, or dramatic, or too much. You thought strength meant being cold, and confidence meant being full of yourself. You admired strong people, but they made you uncomfortable. They were too direct, too honest, too sure. You'd think, who do they think they are? But deep down, you were just afraid, because they showed you a version of yourself you hadn't stepped into yet. They carried a sense of, I know who I am, that you hadn't yet found in yourself. Now you're becoming that person, not by force, but by fire. Life pushed you into moments where being soft wasn't safe anymore. You had to grow teeth. You had to protect yourself. You don't flinch anymore when challenged. You don't dilute yourself to keep others cozy. You've stopped asking for directions on roads you were born to build. You've earned your voice through hard things, whether it's betrayal, loss, loneliness, or mistakes. And yes, it's strange, but it finally feels right. You are no longer easily controlled by shame. Shame is a soul-eating emotion. Carl Jung. Most people don't realize how often shame drives their everyday behaviors. You feel it when you walk into a room and suddenly wonder if you're dressed right. You feel it when you hold back an honest opinion because you're afraid of looking stupid. You feel it when someone keeps interrupting you, and instead of continuing, you go quiet, even when you had something important to say. Shame teaches you to self-monitor in ways that feel normal, but are actually exhausting. You second-guess your tone in a text. You worry you came off too direct. You wonder if being proud of your progress makes you look arrogant. It's subtle, but it shapes everything. But something changes when you start becoming the person you used to be afraid of. You notice the shame, but you don't obey it. You say the thing anyway. You take up the space. You let yourself be seen, even when it feels risky. You don't flinch when someone disagrees with you. You don't crumble under criticism. You trust yourself. It doesn't mean you never feel shame anymore. It just means it doesn't steer the wheel. It may still sit in the back seat, but now, you're the one driving. You say no without a story attached. One of the signs you're becoming someone you used to be afraid of is this. You say no, and that's it. No long explanation, no nervous laughter, no fake excuse to soften the blow. Just no. There was a time when saying no felt like a crime. You'd overthink every boundary. You'd write out long texts trying to justify why you couldn't come to the event, take the call, lend the money, do the favor. You didn't want to seem rude. You didn't want anyone to think you were selfish, cold, or unreliable. So you made up reasons. I'm just super busy right now. I wish I could, but maybe next week. I'm feeling sick. You'd bend yourself into something palatable just to avoid being misunderstood. But now, you've stopped explaining your no, like it needs permission. You say it calmly, directly, and without guilt. You know your limits. You honor your energy. You're not trying to be difficult. You're just being honest. The old you feared disappointing people. The new you fears disappointing yourself. It still surprises some people. That's okay. You've learned that someone else's discomfort with your boundary isn't your problem to fix. You say no now because you finally understand. Your time, peace, and presence are worth protecting. You let people leave without chasing them. Did you remember once in your life when the thought of someone walking out of your life was unbearable? You'd panic. You'd over-apologize. You'd rewrite your boundaries just to keep them around. Even when the relationship was one-sided or toxic, you clung to it. Why? You thought that if someone left, it meant you weren't enough. So you clung harder. You tried to be more lovable, more patient, more forgiving, even when you were exhausted. You thought love was proven by how much you could endure. But as time went on, something shifted. You began to understand that people leaving has little to do with your worth and everything to do with their path. Now, when someone pulls away, you let them. You don't chase. You observe. Not because you don't care, but because you do. About yourself. You've learned that begging someone to stay is a kind of slow self-abandonment, that chasing people who've decided to go doesn't bring them back. It only breaks your spirit. Now, you feel the ache, but you don't panic. You sit with the silence instead of filling it with apologies. You trust that the right people don't need to be chased. And the ones who leave, they're just making space for something better. You trust your gut more than other people's opinions. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Carl Jung. One of the clearest signs that you're becoming the person you used to be afraid of is this. You trust your gut more than the opinions of random people. There was a time when you used to second-guess everything. You'd feel strongly about something, whether it's leaving a job, ending a relationship, or starting a project. But as soon as someone questioned it, you'd start doubting yourself. You'd think, maybe they know better. You'd let their tone, their doubts, their raised eyebrows talk you out of what you already knew. So you'd crowdsource your decision. You'd ask 5 friends, consult a blog post, or maybe even flip a coin, just to feel sure. You were addicted to external validation because you hadn't yet built internal trust. But that's changed. You started noticing a pattern. Every time you ignored your gut, you paid for it, through regret, resentment, or wasted time. Slowly, you began listening to that quiet voice inside, the one that says, leave the room. Call her. Say no. Trust this. It doesn't shout. It doesn't explain itself. But it's clear. And it's right. Now, even when your intuition goes against logic or others disagree, you don't back down. You don't need everyone's blessing. Just alignment with yourself. This kind of self-trust used to scare you. Now, you see it as sacred. You're comfortable making people uncomfortable. If you used to feel bad about making people uncomfortable, but now you don't, you're becoming someone you were once afraid of. And that's not a bad thing. There was a time when your biggest fear was upsetting someone. You'd avoid giving honest feedback because you didn't want to seem rude. You'd hold back a no just to keep someone from feeling rejected. You'd sit through uncomfortable situations, bad dates, unfair work demands, manipulative conversations, because you didn't want to make a scene. Even when your boundaries were crossed, even when your needs were ignored, you smiled, nodded, and kept the peace. Why? You thought being good meant being agreeable. You equated conflict with rejection. But now, you know better. You've learned that avoiding discomfort doesn't keep relationships healthy. It keeps them dishonest. You've realized that when you speak up, it might hurt, but silence cuts deeper over time. So now, you're willing to be the person who says the hard thing. You're okay with the pause that follows a hard truth. The look on someone's face when you say, that doesn't work for me. The tension that comes with setting a boundary. You don't enjoy making people uncomfortable, but you no longer avoid it. Because making someone uncomfortable doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means you're being real, and you're no longer willing to sacrifice your truth just to keep the room calm. You don't tolerate emotional breadcrumbs. Emotional breadcrumbs are the tiny, inconsistent bits of attention someone gives you, just enough to keep you around, but never enough to truly show up. It's the occasional, hey, how have you been? After weeks of silence. It's the late night text with no follow-up the next day. It's the flirtation without commitment. the apology without changed behavior, the empty promises that never become real effort. You used to tolerate it. You clung to crumbs like they were signs of potential. You'd make excuses. He's just busy. She's having a hard time. At least they're trying. They gave you the bare minimum, but expected your full loyalty. You held on to the what if, while ignoring the reality in front of you. And because you hadn't tasted something healthier, you convinced yourself this was love, or loyalty, or normal. But when you become the version of yourself you once feared, the one who has self-respect and doesn't beg for love, you stop accepting scraps. You recognize that real connection isn't inconsistent. Love isn't confusing. You no longer read between the lines, trying to decode mixed signals. You see the silence. You see the delay. And you choose not to chase it. Because you finally believe you deserve more than half effort. You'd rather be alone than almost loved. Breadcrumbs don't satisfy someone who's hungry for something real. And now, you are. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. It's ironic. The people we once judged were often the ones living the freest lives. The ones we called intimidating were usually the ones with boundaries. The ones we thought were too much were often just enough, but we had been taught to be less. Becoming the person you used to fear isn't about becoming harsh or cold. It's about becoming honest. It's about choosing truth over comfort, clarity over approval, and self-respect over fitting in. That version of you always existed. You were just afraid to wake it up. But now you see, strength and softness can live in the same body. You can be kind without being small. You don't owe anyone your silence, your peace, or your power. You're not too much. You're finally just enough for yourself. So if people start saying, "You've changed," "You're different now," or "You're not the same sweet person you used to be," smile, because they're right. You're becoming the kind of person you used to be afraid of, and that might just be your greatest evolution yet.